Assalamu alaikum students. How are you? Hope you all are fine and safe at home. Welcome to the week 5. This is lecture number 1. We have started the chapter number 4, that is about the cells and tissues, and today's topic, filtration and active transport. Here are some objectives: to summarize the process of the filtration and to describe the process of the active transport. First of all, we will discuss the process of filtration. In simple words, filtration is a process by which small molecules are forced to move across the semi-permeable membrane with the aid of the hydrostatic pressure or blood pressure. Before that, we have studied the diffusion, osmosis, and other transport methods. In diffusion and in osmosis, there is a difference between the filtration, diffusion and osmosis. In diffusion, there is a simple transport of the molecules from higher to lower, and in osmosis, there is the involvement of the water molecules. But in filtration, there is the involvement of the semi-permeable membrane. Molecules are forced to move across the semi-permeable membrane, and this is happened by the hydrostatic pressure and blood pressure. As in the capillaries or in the veins or in the arteries, there is a pressure of the blood, so small molecules are forced to move across the membrane. You can see in this diagram, blood is flowing through the capillary, and you can see from the capillary wall the small molecules are coming out due to the blood pressure, and large molecules are not coming out. So we can say filtration is only for the small molecules like gases like oxygen, carbon dioxide, water, but like proteins, lipids, the process of filtration is not happened for these molecules. Now we will discuss the turgor pressure. What is turgor pressure? The turgor of the cell is responsible for maintaining the shapes of non-woody plants and soft portions of the trees and shrubs. Before that, we have studied the water balance problems in the cells. We have seen the 3 types of the solutions: hypotonic, hypertonic and isotonic, and what happened to the cell in these all environments. Like in isotonic environment, where when there is a solute and solvent concentration is equal, the cell is in the normal state. But in other two states, the cell is not in the normal condition. Either it is ruptured or either it is shrinked. In both situations. So when water enters the plant molecule, plant cells have a cell wall and cell membrane too. When water enters the cells of the plant, it creates a pressure on the vacuole. When water enters and it enters the vacuole, as you know, the function of the vacuole is to store the extra water. When water enters the vacuole, it creates a pressure on the external cell wall of the cell, and this pressure is called turgor pressure. And due to this pressure, the shape of the non-woody plants and soft portions of the trees and shrubs, it is maintained. You can see in the diagram when there is a turgor pressure and without it. Now we will come to the active transport. Active transport is the movement of the molecules from an area of the lower concentration to the area of higher concentration. And this movement against the concentration gradient requires the energy in the form of ATP. Before that, we have studied all the method: filtration, osmosis, diffusion. They does not require the energy for their movement. But in active transport, when molecules move from an area of lower to higher concentration, they require the energy, and they require this energy in the form of, in the bundles of ATP, adenosine triphosphate. So they move from one place to another due to this energy. One of the examples of the active transport is sodium potassium pump. Sodium potassium pump. In this process, the carrier proteins of the cell membrane use energy to move the molecules against the concentration gradient. For example, the membranes of the nerve cells have a carrier proteins in the form of sodium potassium pump. And you know, the sodium potassium pump, as name indicate, it is for the transport of the sodium ions and potassium ions. And in the nerve cells, when this nerve cell is in active state or in a deactivated state, then in both states this pump activity is very increased, and potassium moves, sometimes potassium moves outside and sodium moves inside. You can see the diagram of the sodium potassium pump here, outside of the cell and inside of the cell. You can see sodium is moving outside the cell and potassium is moving inside the cell, but this is due to the active transport, and active transport requires the energy. In this diagram there is a three process: active transport, facilitated diffusion, and diffusion has shown. Diffusion and facilitated diffusion both are the passive transports, as they does not require energy, and in active transport ATP is required. In resting, not conducting nerve impulse nerve cells, this pump spends energy ATP to maintain the higher concentration of potassium and lower concentration of sodium inside the cell. For this purpose, the pump actively moves the sodium to the outside of the cell where they are already in higher concentration. Now they are discussing about the nerve cell when it is in the resting position and not conducting the nerve impulse. So what happens? This pump maintains the higher concentration of potassium and lower concentration of sodium inside the cell. So the cell is in resting position. But when it is conducting the nerve impulse, the process is reverse. Here you can see the outside cell environment and inside cell environment. Here the sodium is moving outside the cell and potassium is coming inside the cell, and the carrier protein, which is named as sodium potassium pump, is actively transporting the sodium and potassium with the help of the ATP or energy bundles. Students, here are two videos. You can see them, and your concept will be more cleared by after watching these two videos. Here is an assignment for you. You have to write a note on active transport with the diagram. You have to make a diagram, and you have to describe the process of filtration with the help of diagram. You also make the diagram in both processes. Okay, thank you very much. See you in the next lesson. Allah Hafiz.